Hey guys, hope you're well. I was asked to break down this fight a while ago and I finally got around to it. We'll be studying how Teofimo beat Lomachenko and taking the 12th round in its entirety to study. Interestingly enough, I think this is still true to this day. This was the record of most landed punches on Lomachenko by his opponent. So that's why I thought it would be an interesting round to study. We're going to see how Teo exploited a lot of footwork mistakes made by Lomachenko, as well as how Loma managed to adjust and find his own success. This is definitely one of my favorite videos I've ever made because of how high level the decision making was. I do apologize for the length, but I hope you enjoy this video just as much as I did. Anyway, let's get into it. Okay, so let's start and let's see what we can learn. So if we look at Teofimo in this first exchange, he's going to come out with some touch jabs, looking for a counter. And as Lomachenko overcommits, comes back with a 3-punch and a little check there. Very interesting way to start the round by setting his feet in the center, touching the front glove of Lomachenko, and basically using that to understand his timing and reading Lomachenko's intentions. He's seen that Lomachenko slipped inside, trying to counter with his left hand of his own. So through these touch jabs, he's going to look for a counter Teofimo, pull back with a parry, and then counter with this nice left hook, a right uppercut, which I don't know if it lands, and then a left hook to the side as he checks off. And you see Lomachenko's footwork here, having completely squared up, sort of smothers Teofimo's counters a little bit, which is why it's such a great decision to check off here. Loses his balance a bit and gets pushed back. And again, Teofimo's going to keep the distance very subtly with the feet, with these small back steps, as Lomachenko gets into these aggressive looks. We've got to think about the context of the round being that Lomachenko needs this round to win the fight pretty much. Both of them really need to stamp it, and Teofimo's very alert and prepared for that. Now, Lomachenko's going to start with feint, comes out of range, and then Teofimo is going to try and control these in and out feints by raising his lead glove to his temple, occupying the lead hand of Lomachenko, which tempers him a little bit and lets him find his range. Gets into this Philly shell look where he looks for a counter, and as Lomachenko comes up with the level change, Teofimo very rapidly slips and comes up with this sort of screw uppercut which lands just to the jaw, but Lomachenko after this feint steps back, so manages to take the edge off. Now, one thing that's very important is Lomachenko's base breaks here. He's coming forward in a bladed position, and as you can see, when he defends himself, muddles up his feet as he goes backwards. He does it again here, comes forward, defends, muddles up his feet. Now, it might look like nothing, but do that 15 times around and tell me how much time you waste doing that. It's a very subtle thing, but if Teofimo just wants him to reset, all he's really got to do is throw with a little bit of intent as Lomachenko steps forward, and it buys him a little bit of distance, which tempers Lomachenko whilst he's being aggressive. It also makes it a little bit obvious as he's stepping back in. As you can see here, he sets his feet, and then as soon as he sets his front foot, Teofimo's going to feint his lead hand, get him in a defensive reaction, then comes up with the jab, which gets Lomachenko into a slip position, comes around with a hook to the top of the head, and then doesn't retract his hand, keeps it there with the forearm frame, and pushes off Lomachenko. Again, Lomachenko's feet gets muddled. Great lead hand work from Teofimo to buy him back some time. So now Lomachenko's going to try to establish his own lead hand work. He steps forward with a high guard, making sure he's alert for any oncoming attacks from Teofimo, and decides to keep his hands high to his temples, then feint it low before coming around with a double jab. Teofimo reacts wonderfully though in that Philly shell position where he looks for counters and just times his step in with his own jab before taking his foot into the inside position and slipping as he inside pivots. Really wonderful work, straight into a reset. Lomachenko's trying to cut him off. So now Lomachenko's going to close the distance in a straight line. You see him losing some hard slip looks here. As Teofimo feints back his counter, you can see Lomachenko's lead foot just sort of retract a bit into a defensive position, although he does a good job of feinting his lead hand up, showing that he can also possibly counter, and then slips off to his right just a little bit, doubles it over as he steps forward and closes the distance, now in a really low position. And what does this do? This disguises the left hand a little bit as he shoots it up from this low position. Really hard to see. However, we saw that Lomachenko has poor foot positioning as he throws his left hand earlier and squares up his base with it. Teofimo reacts straight away to being hit and counters with his own really nice right hand as Lomachenko squares up, which allows him a little bit of exit space around to the right. Nice work. Teofimo's got his back to the ropes here. He's in that Philly shell position. He needs to get off the ropes immediately. So what does he do? He's going to jab to the air, occupy the distance a little bit before feinting coming in with a bend at the waist, which gets Lomachenko to open up by taking a step back, but instead comes around with a left hook and pulls him closely into this clinch off the ropes. Amazing decision making there from Teofimo. Okay, they break from this clinch, they're back into the center. And now how's Lomachenko going to react to all this? So he starts by shuffling forward aggressively. No one has the outside foot position, but Teofimo has his feet set. He's got his temple guard look, Lomachenko does, his antenna, checking if anything's coming back as he closes the distance, and times his step in really well with his jab as he tries to take the angle. Again though, Teofimo, great instincts, tries to parry, but Lomachenko shot his jab to the exposed side of Teofimo, and as he takes the angle, squares up his base a little bit, tries to keep his arm there as a little frame, but Teofimo, with a lot of intent, counters back with a right uppercut. I think it lands just to the chest, but is enough to keep the distance a little bit for him to step out from this counter left hand. Really nice work so far from both. And now how's this going to progress? So we're going to see Teo go back with a right glove touch, just occupying that front hand of Lomachenko, then occupy it with his front glove. Really nice. You see Lomachenko decide to drop his front glove now because he knows he's being occupied, waves it around like a wand to come up, which gets Teofimo to back off a little bit because he knows how dangerous that front hand is. Now as he comes back in, he feints his lead hand, gets Teofimo to pull back a little bit. Teofimo's now back against the ropes. He's going to pivot out. How's he going to do that? He's going to do that whilst trying to occupy the front hand of Lomachenko, which works slightly even though Lomachenko brings it down a bit to avoid the touch. And then Teofimo's going to play it a little bit elusively. He's going to misdirect to his left, bounce out to his right instead, change his level completely, showing Lomachenko he's very confident with his hands low here. Lomachenko's a little bit tentative to come in because he's just been countered hard quite a few times now. And as he steps in, his front hand's in a bit of a poor position against a lower target, same way Lomachenko set up his left hand by being in that low position. Teofimo's going to come back up with a left hook. Really nice work. Lomachenko tries to duck it to go for this left hand to the body, which lands well, and tries to finish with his third shot with this one up top. Teofimo rolls it really well on the shoulder, parries the follow-up left hand, and then engages with his shoulder really nicely to Lomachenko's chest. It squares up Lomachenko, and then just as he thinks the exchange is finished, boom, takes a right hand as he's exiting. Really nice work from both. Again, the base break from Lomachenko, the obvious step back in when he's not super alert. And if you look at Lomachenko's foot positioning, it is in no base ready to defend right now. Teofimo knows this and catches him in this bad position, forces him into a squeeze with the jab, and then works two sides with 3 hooks to the body here as he pivots off. Amazing action so far. Lomachenko tries to retaliate with his counter left hand, but Teo's found the space and is in a better base than Lomachenko is. Again here, Lomachenko coming forward, shuffling in with poor footwork, unfortunately. And as he steps forward, Teo knows he's not in a great base. He sees him squares on, so tries to catch him for it. But Lomachenko does a good job of using a step back off the shuffle and steps back from it. However, as you can see, poor base break, takes a while to get back into there. And Teo's just relaxing, knowing that he doesn't need to do much to chase Lomachenko, as Lomachenko's coming into him with, unfortunately, poor execution, which he knows he can capitalize on. Lomachenko tries to take back the center with these circle steps and sees the jab coming from Teofimo, which he slips but just manages to land near the ear. Nice step in from Teofimo, who's now occupying the center and holding his position. And again, the sheer size difference shows up in these base breaks, in my opinion, because as Lomachenko's walking around to the left, he's trying to control the lead hand, be aware of the right hand, and Teofimo's going to do what he did in the earlier rounds, which is occupy him from this distance to the gloves and the shoulders. He foot feints first, then feints again with the lead hand low, tries to draw out the right hand of Lomachenko, but then occupies the glove with his left-handed shot before whipping it around to the glove. And this is what I mean by the size difference. It's such a powerful blow, and Lomachenko doesn't step back fundamentally, instead swings his right foot back, and it forces him into a base break again. Teo almost controlling when he's allowing Lomachenko to set his feet. So Lomachenko knows he's near the ropes, he has to move off, move around to the left, and does a good job of baiting a counter here. How does he do that? He raises his guard, which usually means he's looking to be aggressive and is being alert. But then as he sees the jab, as Teo tries to occupy his front hand, he just pulls it down, pulls back a little bit, and jabs over the top really nicely. He gets a little bit greedy, however, and it is the 12th round, so they are a little bit tired, and he feints his left hand out and decides, okay, well, he's moving back, I can just walk in. Bad positioning with his base, super square on, and Teo's just going to capitalize on it. He feints out the right hand a little bit, which forces Lomachenko into a sort of right slip, and then sets his back foot and brings up this wonderful left uppercut before touching with the right glove to occupy the left hand a little bit, and then finishing his work with a nice offline jab before stepping back. Really nice setup and defensive responsibility there, but Lomachenko still manages to catch him very slightly with these two shots. And you can see the weight difference of their punches, in my opinion. There is such a vast difference in how they're landing. And this is really, in my opinion, what made Lomachenko super tentative to close the distance, and why it forced him to do it in the 12th round, because he knew it was very close. But at this point in the fight, you're going to do it without great execution, which is what he's getting capitalized on now. So here he goes. He's going to try to close the distance again. Slips off to the right. Very good slip. Though Teo answers back with a counter feint, which makes him back off. Then he's going to raise his glove to his temple, feint it down, change the level to the body. Thinks he's got the opening from this low position, so jabs up, though again squares his base as he tries to take the right angle. Again, Teo defends with the parry in the shoulder and shoots the right uppercut back with a lot of intent. That's a lovely shot there. Immediately gets back to a bladed position with his shoulder. And as Lomachenko steps back in, preps himself to be aggressive again, Teo knows this and then just feints him twice. And again, look at Lomachenko's hip position and feet. Just square up momentarily. Teo's allowed to take a little reset while Lomachenko was about to be aggressive. Same thing again. He walks over to the right, sees Lomachenko starting to feint. He feints back himself with a left slip feint and an uppercut feint. And look at Lomachenko's feet. Breaks it backwards, is a little bit overeager in trying to get back into that lost space, and comes in with a slip as he squares his feet coming forward. Though Teo's alert for this and sort of checks off with the left hook. Tries to parry, but the left hand lands, but is maintaining a great base going backwards and avoids the right hand by deflecting it off the shoulder before shooting his own right hand back, which lands really well. So the clear difference between them is who's got the better base in this 12th round where they're both a little tired, as well as the weight of these punches making Lomachenko hesitant. Again, Teo's starting to build real confidence now with his counter-punching, gets into that low slip position, starts occupying the punching lane to the right glove, and as he sees Lomachenko overeager and step into it after not testing the waters, shoots that right uppercut. I think it might land to the gloves or chest. Lomachenko definitely feels it and has to readjust his balance again. Same thing we're going to see again. Base break, step back in a bit too aggressively, and Teofimo timing it with a step-in jab and this wonderful right hand that lands really well. He's going to do it again, base break, step back in too aggressively. Teofimo again just tries to time him with these two body shots here before clinching. Now about this clinch, you think they're locked into position, but as Lomachenko does his famous breakaway, Teo realizes this and boom, hits him with this really lovely right hand. I don't think the referee really needed to get involved there, but Teo had absolutely the right alertness you need on the inside there. Okay, let's keep watching. Okay, so they come back in from this clinch. Again, an aggressive Lomachenko shuffling forward, testing out the reactions with a high guard before deciding to commit. Step in with the jab, taking the outside foot position and following in with this 2-3. If we look at Teofimo, he tries to pull away from the jab, but it catches him and then hooks Lomachenko at the same time. He's got his backhand down, then decides to break his base as he slips off to the left and then uses it to shuffle out a bit before regaining it. You can see him try to maintain a little bit of distance with his right glove to the air as he regains his balance. More subconsciously there, then you see him pivot off and start to move backwards a little bit, and you could call this look a sort of baiting look to bait Lomachenko in. But there's a super interesting theory about these type of low guard looks where you trust your counter punching and your head movement so much that it's even harder to close the distance against, especially against such a powerful puncher, because people are trained for heavy bags, basically. Seeing a high guard in front of you is probably the most comforting guard you could box against, since there's no surprise about it. Anyway, this sort of halts Lomachenko's momentum. He waits for him to shuffle in, raise his guard, and then as soon as he feints in, that's when Teofimo is going to time the jab. Lomachenko tries to look for a counter and pull away before coming in with the lead hand over the top, but Teo gets under it and resets around to his left. At least I thought he did. He even duped me. Misdirects instead and then takes an inside pivot, and you see how much this has bugged Lomachenko's footwork. I'm not sure if he thought too far ahead though, because he's now backed up into a corner where he doesn't really have much options. He's going to decide to try to get close to Lomachenko on the inside, and here's where Lomachenko's going to do some really nice work. Step to the inside angle, feint low, knowing he's drawing out some sort of reaction from Teo, and then as soon as Teo comes forwards, catches him in the space between them, since it was quite wide to try and smother with one step, with these three nice hooks here, adapting his combinations to close range very quickly, even sort of checking off a little bit with that right hook before regaining his base and sort of offline shooting that left hand. Really nice work. Now he's going to close the distance a little bit more aggressively. Teo's on the ropes looking for a counter in this Philly shell look. Lomachenko level changes, stays in this low position before coming up with the jab, which lands well. But then Teofimo tries to commit with the counter straight away and hooks as he sets up his momentum to get around Lomachenko's left elbow and shoot this wonderful body shot as Lomachenko closes the distance too quickly. Really lovely punch landed there. Here they're going to go into this wonderful countering battle, where if you're one of my boxers, you'll recognize a little bit of this in the hook drill. You see Teo jab out, Lomachenko slip in, and then force Teofimo into a defensive position with a feint left hand, then steps to the inside angle before shooting this nice 2, though Teo manages to get under this 3 here. Still at close range, Lomachenko tries to come forward with a squeeze, and look at Teo's forearm here as he frames on it, closes the guard inwards, and then shoots this left hook around to the body. Kind of lands a little bit low before smothering with his right shoulder really nicely. Lomachenko adapts well, comes up with the uppercut. Great adjustment with his close range shots. But Teo was trying to set up this left hook, which sort of clubs Lomachenko around the back of the head. Tries to pivot off here. Lomachenko catches him on the exit with this really nice jab, though Teo's not having any of it, and shoots his right hand straight back, which lands kind of partially to the forehead. And this is what makes Lomachenko step back a little bit, regain his base, try to take a breather. As soon as Teo sees this, feints back in, shoots up the left hand, and tries to come in with his right. Lomachenko slips off. Super high level action there. And we're going to see sort of the part 2 of that as Teo sets his feet, both in their respective guards. Lomachenko engaged with a high guard, trying to see whether there's any danger, whereas Teo's looking for a counter in that Philly shell, tries to roll the jab off the shoulder, but it catches him well before shooting this right uppercut to the gloves. Again, you can see Lomachenko's reaction to that, even if he blocked it, is quite heavy. Lomachenko catches, counters straight back once he's on that center line with this lovely left hand. Now, I'm getting tired just watching this. It's very high level, but very tedious work. You see as Lomachenko tries to close the distance to the inside angle, Teo occupies his front glove and then feints to the body before trying to frame a little bit and then break off from close range. But Lomachenko sort of catches him with a hook coming out. Finally break away from this long exchange here. You see Teofimo trying to walk off into a reset as he moves backwards and around to his left. Lomachenko catches up to him as he's got his back near the ropes, and Teo's going to try to be elusive with his hands down. Lomachenko tests the waters, feints out, sees the level changed position from Teofimo, and decides it's easy pickings if he engages with the front shoulder, closes the distance, and then as he pulls back up, catches him with this wonderful left hand. Great adjustment to Teofimo, trying to be a little bit too coy for someone as smart as Lomachenko. Here Lomachenko's starting to have a little bit of success, cuts him off to the left, starts to feint his guard a little bit, drawing out that right parry from Teofimo, and then jabbing over the top of it. Manages to sort of block away from this right hand. I see it miss there. Teo engages with the right shoulder away from the ropes, tries to walk himself back near the center, and great inside work from Lomachenko here as he doesn't land this hook to the body, but changes it into a frame as he pushes him in to this right hook here. Really nice work, and then he breaks away back into the center himself. Again, engages straight away off the base break, feints with his high guard before letting off his jab at Teo's exposed side, tries to come in with the 2, and great defensive instincts, manages to duck under this right hand here before Teo manages to catch him with the counter. Same setup again, he's going to step forward, feint with a level change, and then from this low position shoot his right jab up to the forehead of Teo, which is really hard to defend since it's hard to parry upwards, and this time manages to catch Teofimo in a rare moment when he's not counter punching with his left hand. And think about how mentally draining this is for most people. You can see even Teofimo here start to feel the effects of the constant pressure that Lomachenko puts onto you with feints, and never knowing whether he's actually going to commit or not. It's very hard to counter everything and very mentally draining. So I think Teo's starting to feel the pace a little bit here, and here's where Lomachenko's footwork unfortunately doesn't do him much justice. He comes in with his in and out feint, steps over to the left, defends the jab rather well, but since Teo steps into the inside angle and pushes forward, Lomachenko breaks his base as he readjusts it. Teo's bought himself a little bit of time to walk over to the right and rest up a bit, have a little breather. Same thing again as he walks over, maintaining a little bit of distance with good back steps. Here he takes a half step back, widens his base, and times Lomachenko as he feints in with his lead glove with this nice jab through the middle. Again, really hard to see a shot coming from down below, and you see that this jab literally starts from Teofimo's thigh almost. Lomachenko a little bit hesitant to close the distance here, comes in with a feint, but then steps back out straight away, giving Teofimo a little bit of time to recover with this misdirection feint and a reset. However, he's kind of walked himself into a corner here. Lomachenko continues to feint him as he moves around. So if we count the feints here, 1 as he steps around, 2, and a third feint with a head feint. So 3 feints for my boxers watching, before forcing Teofimo into a defensive position and trying to set up his attack by working with what's exposed. Shoots his first jab to the arm, then his second shot to the chest, before trying to come up with these 2 shots. So Teo does a good job of deflecting off the shoulder and bending at the waist into Lomachenko's sort of abdominal area, having that time to breathe a little bit more. Now, I think Lomachenko's starting to pick up on the fact that he's doing a little bit better this round. Tries to come in with the high guard, looks for a counter, slips on the inside and tries to shoot this body shot. But you can see Teo's intent here is so overwhelming. He tries to deflect off the front shoulder and come up with this really huge uppercut. Now, his intent and confidence on this shot is what makes it so hard to close the distance on him, because he trusts himself to land it so well, so much that you start to believe it as well, especially after it does land. Anyway, Lomachenko's now squared up. Teo's got a better base here. He pushes him off with the front shoulder while sort of smothering this right hook, then readjusts himself a little bit by framing with the right forearm, setting up all his weight onto this really, really powerful left hook that just whips into Lomachenko's temple there. What does Lomachenko do? Break his base, step back in way too quickly, and Teofimo times it with his sort of 5-punch combination where he jabs, uses 2 hooks as Lomachenko's in this squeeze position, steps back into his jab to set up these hooks as well, and hitting wherever there's an opening, even if it's to the side of the head, before stepping back from the counter. And that is very demoralizing for Lomachenko after he was doing so well. And you see Lomachenko now be a little bit tentative with Teofimo's feints and react to them quite defensively. Now, how's he going to recover this position? He's going to decide to sort of say, fuck it, barge in with his shoulder as Teo's in a square hip position, and then knows Teo's about to load up with the left hook, sees the exposed side on the other, and shoots this really short left hook, which catches him really well. Huge risk to take, but you can see him preemptively defend the left hook straight away. Very interesting tactic there. He breaks his base, comes back in, and that's when Teofimo decides to engage again. Steps in hard into his first touch jab, forcing Lomachenko in a squeeze position. Shoots his right hook to the body, which kind of misses, but recovers very well with his right forearm frame before whipping in this left hook in this southpaw position, which again sort of hits the ear area of Lomachenko and forces him backward a little bit. So much intent and weight on these shots. And some of these exchanges, we don't even have to break down that much. I mean, just look at the rotation of Teofimo's hips on some of these shots that aren't landing, and you'll see how dangerous it is to close the distance on him in a 12th round when your feet are being a little bit muddled because you're tired. You see him now decide to come forward. It's the last 20 seconds of the fight. Engage into close range. Again, that sort of switching position where he's just pummeling the hooks in. Whether they're landing or not doesn't matter. He knows Lomachenko's feeling the weight of these shots. And last 10 seconds, there seems to have been a head clash there, which causes a cut. And let's see how Teo stamps out this round. He's going to start with a touch jab as Lomachenko steps forward. Occupy that front hand and occupy it again as he steps in. Tries to pull it down. And then again, the weight of these shots, shoots this right hand which lands to the glove, and look at the impact it has on Lomachenko. Same with this left hook here, just pushes him back. Incredibly intentful footwork as he comes forward, shuffling into these shots hard, and then finishes with this brilliant right hand whilst Lomachenko's squared up and trying to shuffle back away from these shots. And as he sees Lomachenko engage into close range, dips his position, 2 hooks to the body very fundamentally, before finishing with this left hook to the head as he pulls back, which makes him avoid the left hook. Steps out a little to the left and tries to shoot this right hand. A little bit greedy now, in a square position. Lomachenko in a better base, measures a little bit with this forearm frame, and then shoots this really nice left hand whilst Teofimo's in a bad position. Teofimo checks off a little bit with his double hook, knows he's on the ropes, deflects off the shoulder, bends at the waist from this 1-2. Lomachenko adjusts his feet quickly, tries to capitalize with these 2 short shots, but then as soon as Teofimo postures up, he shuffles into this big left hook, again, which sort of lands to the arm, makes Lomachenko super defensive before whipping in this right hook, which I think partially lands, very, very heavy. And that's the end of the round. Amazing, amazing round of boxing. I really hope you enjoyed that. Both competitors really trying to stamp their last round in very technical ways. Thank you for watching, guys. I really, really enjoyed doing this breakdown. You probably heard it in my voice. But yeah, the next one should be on Bivol versus Zurdo Ramirez. So make sure you're subscribed and stay tuned for that. Happy training, guys. Take care.